Hey guys, I'm Tanya from We Love Baking, and today I'm going to show you how to make crème caramel, a delicious baked custard that is covered in caramel sauce. There are two parts to this recipe, the dry caramel, which we'll pour into the molds first, and then the custard base, which is really easy to make. The custard has to be baked very gently, so we'll be using a water bath today. If you've never baked in a water bath before, don't worry, it's actually much simpler than it sounds. You will need a small pan that is just big enough to fit two 6-ounce ramekins with a bit of space around them. Make sure the sides of the pan are high enough though, so you don't accidentally spill any hot water. Place a small towel in the pan. The towel will keep the ramekins from sliding and will protect them from the bottom heat. Try to keep it flat and fold those edges so they don't drop into the custard when they get wet. You're going to need two small molds. I'm using two different types here just so I can show you the difference between them. Fill a kettle with water and bring to a boil and set it aside. We want the water to be hot, not boiling when we pour it into the water bath. Okay, we are ready to make the caramel. Sprinkle the sugar evenly over the bottom of a small saucepan. Place over medium-high heat. As soon as the sugar starts to melt around the edges, lower the heat to medium-low. Don't stir it yet, or you might end up with large chunks of sugar. You can shake the pan around occasionally to redistribute the sugar. When the sugar has almost fully melted, you can gently move the undissolved sugar towards the melted sugar with a heat-proof spatula or a wooden spoon. If you notice that the color is changing too quickly at any point but the sugar hasn't melted yet, lower the heat a little more. The caramel is ready when it turns amber and all the sugar has melted. Turn off the heat and slowly drizzle 2 teaspoons of hot water over the caramel, stirring constantly. Be careful, it's going to bubble up a lot. If you get any lumps, just keep stirring over very low heat and they will eventually dissolve, don't worry about it. Pour the hot caramel evenly in the molds to coat the bottom. The caramel will set very quickly, so pour it as soon as it's ready. Adding water to the caramel is optional, but it does make it easier to pour into the ramekins, so up to you. Let's make the custard now. Pour the milk, heavy cream, and half of the sugar in a small saucepan. I also like to add some orange zest. It gives it such a nice flavor, but it's optional. You can skip it if you want. Heat until warm, swirling the saucepan occasionally to dissolve the sugar. In the meantime, whisk the egg with the remaining sugar in a small bowl just until combined. You don't want to whisk it too much or it's gonna get foamy and it's gonna ruin the texture of the custard. Okay, now switch to a spoon and slowly drizzle the warm liquid over the egg mixture, stirring constantly. Don't pour it too quickly though, so you don't end up with scrambled eggs. Add a little bit of vanilla for flavor and just briefly stir to combine, then cover and set aside for 5 to 10 minutes. I like to use this time to lightly grease the molds with butter. You don't have to do this, but it will make it easier to unmold the crème caramel. You can also use a pastry brush to grease the mold. Just make sure you apply it everywhere so the custard doesn't stick. Strain through a fine mesh sieve placed over a measuring cup to get rid of air bubbles and any bits of eggs. Then divide evenly between the two molds. I like to strain it once more as I'm pouring it into the molds, but you don't have to if you don't want to. Try not to pour the custard from a distance though, so it doesn't splash and create bubbles. If there are bubbles on the surface of the custard though, you can gently pop them with a paper towel, or you can also skim off the foam with a spoon. Fill the pan with the hot water until it reaches about halfway up the sides of the ramekin. Try not to splash the custard, and fix the towel again if you need to. If it's hanging over the pan, it will start to drip in your oven as it gets wet. You're going to end up with puddles there. Now wear oven mitts and carefully place in the oven. Cover loosely with parchment paper and bake until set but still jiggly. If you have no idea what this means, then insert a digital thermometer in the center of the custard without touching the bottom. It should register about 170 degrees Fahrenheit or 77 degrees Celsius. Transfer to a wire rack and cool down at room temperature for about an hour. You can use kitchen tongs for this, or you can use a slotted spatula. Then cover well and chill, ideally overnight so it's easy to unmold. Okay, time for the trickiest part of the recipe, unmolding the crème caramel. Gently push down the edges of the custard with a spoon, I use a plastic spoon, to release it from the mold. Then gently tap the sides of the mold open side up. You might see some of the caramel coming back up. Now place a plate over the mold and invert it, then gently shake it up and down while holding the plate to release the custard. If you forgot to grease the mold and it won't release, then you can slide a thin knife around the edge of the custard. Okay, are you ready to remove the mold? And there you have it. You can see here the difference between the two molds. One is taller than the other. I really hope you'll love this recipe as much as I do. It's so creamy and it tastes just wonderful with the caramel sauce. You can find the full recipe linked in the description below. Enjoy!